Welcome to the show. We all decided that Joe Concha was just a little too pale for television, so our executive producer, who's got nothing but money, sent him off to Florida to get a little sunshine, and that leaves you with me, Rick Unger, in the hosting chair, where I'm joined, as always, by the brilliant and lovely Heather Hansen. Also joining is the host of Newsmax's Close Encounter, Lisa Jandovitz, and former Lieutenant Governor of the state of New York and Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy, Betsy McCoy, is joining us. So, now that you know the players, let's get right to it. The Daily Download. 2 nights ago in Ferguson, Missouri, a pair of officers were shot outside the Ferguson Police Department as they were watching over what was considered a peaceful protest.
Acknowledgement 9 months ago would have kept that from happening.
Hopefully that protester is giving a little second thought to that comment, but we move on. While the shooter remains on the loose, President Obama released a tweet to condemn the shootings. It reads, "Violence against police is unacceptable. Our prayers are with the officers in Missouri. Path to justice is one all of us must travel together." The president then took to the airways to discuss the shooting, but he picked a rather unusual, unorthodox venue. He appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel Show on ABC.
I think that what had been happening in Ferguson was oppressive and objectionable and was worthy of protest. But there was no excuse for criminal acts. And whoever fired those shots shouldn't detract from the issue.
Now, the president would go on to say that we shouldn't generalize the protesters.
You can't generalize about protesters who, it turns out, had some very legitimate grievances. The Justice Department report showed that they were being stopped. African Americans were being stopped disproportionately, mainly so the city could raise money, even though these were unjust.
And the president's remarks have left some asking, what exactly was unjust, Mr. President?
And what was happening in Ferguson was you had city government telling the police department and that stop more people, we need to raise more money. Folks would get stopped, they'd get tickets, then they'd have to wait in line to pay it, take a day off work, folks would lose their jobs. In some cases, they were thrown in jail because they didn't have enough money for the fines.
And finally, the president repeated something we've heard him say in the past, that the practices of the Ferguson Police Department are practiced elsewhere across the country.
It is not unique, but it's also not the norm. And we've got to constantly, when we're thinking about issues of racial progress or any kind of issue, recognize that things get better, but there's still more work to do. And we shouldn't be complacent about the very real existence of problems out there, but we shouldn't despair and think nothing's changed. If people of goodwill, which is the overwhelming majority of Americans, are working together, these are problems we can solve.
So, Heather Hansen, let's start with you. Was it appropriate for the president to talk about this serious subject on what's effectively a comedy TV show?
I think the venue was inappropriate. I think that more importantly, what he said was inappropriate. He keeps dismissing acts of evil as just acts that are sort of dismissive, and then he moves on to the legitimate grievances of the protesters. When he said that, it reminded me that he had said that recently somewhere else. And in his op-ed about violent extremism back in February for the LA Times, he talked about people there having legitimate grievances. To instead of focusing on the fact that 2 police officers could have been killed and focusing on the wrong there, instead he dismissed that and sort of just brought it back to the wrong that had been done to the protesters. There was a time for that. There is a time for that. But right now, in the face of what's going on with our policemen, there is also a time to honor them and to talk about what happened here.
So, Lisa, I mean, it seems that the president's trying to keep a balance in some sorts of acknowledging that the protesters are legitimate, but obviously condemning this.
He's not really condemning. He's not really condemning what happened. He never used the words. And you know what? I don't always fully agree with him, but what Geraldo Rivera said the other day on Fox is that he needs to come out, and I think he says it needs to say this assault on our officers cannot stand. This we must hunt them down. This cannot stand. I will not abide it. I stand shoulder to shoulder with every man and woman in blue. He did not say that at all.
Betsy can't wait. She can't take it.
Well, no compound sentence. It shouldn't have been, I condemn the killing, but.
Right.
And in fact, that Justice Department report is a sham, a cover to...
You don't like the Justice Department report?
Have you read it?
Yes.
Well, I've read it. And the fact is that it is designed to provide cover to all those people, politicians and members of the media, who were going around saying, hands up, don't shoot. And in fact, they were totally wrong about that policeman. But also, this report...
But the Department of Justice basically exonerated the policeman.
That's right. But
and
not
didn't go
only
with
that,
the
but they
hands up,
also
don't shoot.
condemned this entire police department. Yes, there were a couple of bad apples who have been fired or resigned, but the fact is they used the most illegitimate statistical analysis to try to condemn this police department, and others around the country have pointed out that in fact this police department looks pretty good on many measurements compared with others in the United States.
Though, those bad apples really, really ruin the bunch, because then it's very easy to have this conversation.
They were let go, and the fact is, we all have bad apples, and we let them go.
But
the Justice Department report made it sound like this entire police department was simply ridden with racists, and it isn't.
And it's irrelevant to the fact that 2 cops were shot at. We've talked about the Justice Department report. It has been discussed in the press. It was time for the president to do what Lisa said and to come down hard. You know who actually did is Holder. Holder talked about them as punks.
I was going to bring that up. Are all of you satisfied with what the Attorney General had to say?
Shockingly,
Just
yes.
quickly.
Yeah.
You were surprised to the positive.
Surprised and happy
Lisa?
about it.
But Holder did, I thought some of his words were inflammatory.
Quickly.
And I think that the report he provided is misleading and an injustice to the nation.
Okay, well, there you have it. That covers it, I think. Coming up next, some senators have concluded that signing the letter warning Iran that Congress might undo any agreement reached isn't playing so well. We're going to get into that in a moment. And welcome back to the show. As you can see, Joe is out today. So the executive producer, in his infinite wisdom, made the mistake of giving me 100% control of the program. You heard it, folks. A real live liberal guest hosting a show by himself on Newsmax. Whatever is this world coming to? Now, the letter heard round the world. That's right, I'm talking about the open letter to Iran, drafted by freshman Tea Party-backed Senator Tom Cotton, that said roughly, whatever deal you make with the president will be undone by Congress after he leaves. Now, the response, we can easily say, has been condemned by Democrats, including President Obama, and I suspect our European and Asian partners in this effort were probably not particularly pleased either. As for the president, here he is in a trailer for a new interview he did with the HBO show Vice, telling us what...
I'm embarrassed for them to address a letter to the Ayatollah, who they claim is our mortal enemy. And their basic argument to them is, don't deal with our president, because you can't trust him to follow through on an agreement. It's close to unprecedented.
Now, the letter created sharp criticism from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Vice President Joe Biden, and even the conservative-leaning Wall Street Journal that said in part, President Obama's looming nuclear deal with Iran may be the security blunder of the young century, and Congress should vote on it, which is why it's too bad that Republican senators took their eye off the ball on Monday with a letter to the government of Iran. The problem with the GOP letter is that it's a distraction from what should be the main political goal of persuading the American people. Even Fox News host Megyn Kelly was confused by the move.
We haven't released those. It's frankly not fair to the secretary, not fair to your viewers or my fellow citizens to selectively release information. Now, if she wants to release all of them, with the emphasis being on the word all, she's welcome to do that. I can't stop her from doing it, but serious
I think that was Senator Cotton who was holding his ground. Do we have more to play of what the senator had to say? I think not.
don't make
There he is.
selective releases.
Well, let me make sure I understand why this is significant, and that is by using this private account on a private server, she could not only keep those emails from the reach of the government, as I understand it, but she could delete the emails without anybody knowing it. So she has sent.
All right, so the way I see it, we've got Tom Cotton doing Megyn Kelly. We've got Senator McCain doing Tom Cotton. It's Friday, folks. Deal with it, and you got a liberal in charge, so you know it's going to get screwed up. So
There's the truth.
it was kind of a very rapid process. Everybody was looking forward to getting out of town because of the snowstorm. What snowstorm? I think we probably should have had more discussion about it, given the blowback that there is. So standing here on the phone is my friend, a former top advisor to the Bush administration, celebrated Republican consultant and founder of Christie Strategies, Ron Christie. Ron, good to have you.
Rick, my friend, happy Friday. How are you?
Same to you, and it's quite a Friday around here, let me tell you. It seems to me, and maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, it certainly wouldn't be the first time, that Republicans might be wishing that maybe this letter never happened. What do you think?
No, I think if it's one thing that this letter has produced, for the first time in the 6 years that President Obama has been in office, we've not had an honest dialogue about the engagement with the United States and our allies as it pertains to Iran and their wish to enrich uranium and to proliferate weapons of mass destruction. The president seems very intent on striking a deal, any deal, with Iran to burnish his legacy. But what I think these 47 senators said is, wait a second, we're a co-equal branch of government. We have the obligation to represent hundreds of millions of constituents across this country who might be a little concerned about what the president's doing in secrecy, negotiating with the mullahs. So, Mr. President, if you won't negotiate with us, we're going to make sure that the American people know where we're coming from.
So, Ron, I think that's a completely credible argument with respect to what this was all about. I actually agree with you. I think that whatever treaty may be negotiated, if one, should go to the United States Senate for advice and consent. This is a very serious, important deal. So I'm with you there. But it really does kind of beg the question, which is not the content of what he wrote, which could have been an op-ed in the New York Times or somewhere. The fact that they sent that letter to the leaders of Iran. That's really where I want you to address.
Well, I'm not really worried about that. I look back to 2007 when my former boss, President Bush, was in office, and Nancy Pelosi had wanted to go to Syria to sit down with Bashar al-Assad to strengthen relations between our two countries. And we made it very clear in the Bush administration we didn't want her to go to Damascus, and she went. And there wasn't the same level of hysteria in the media saying, oh, the Logan Act's been broken. And so I think that Democrats have done it. I think Republicans have done it. And yet, Rick, in both instances, what did it do? It sharpens the attention of the American people on Syria and presently in Iran of what exactly is our government doing to make sure that these tyrants are taken care of?
Ron, it's Heather Hansen here. To that point, my concern is that the focus has now turned of the debate has now turned from the issues that you're talking about here to whether or not people support this darn letter. You know, people are taking surveys. Politico did a survey that said a third of Republicans are against it. Who cares? What we should be talking about and getting the debate back to is whether or not and how we're going to handle this nuclear deal. How do you think we change that debate and get the focus back where it belongs?
Well, spot on, Heather. And I think where we are now is it appears that the administration wants to take whatever negotiated agreement they come with to the United Nations. And I think that what Republicans and Democrats will do in the coming days is to press the president for more specificity as to what deal he's pursuing and to ensure, as Rick said, and I think all three of us would agree, whatever agreement the president might reach with Iran, it doesn't go to the United Nations first. It first goes to the United States Senate. We can have hearings on it. We can debate it. The administration can outline why this is in our best interest. And then I think we can chart a course forward. But if we start talking about polls and focus groups, it's wrong. This is dangerous. This is something that both parties and both sides should step up and recognize we need to do what's the people's business, which is making sure that we can contain a very dangerous Iran.
Ron Christie, Christie Strategies. Ron, have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, Ron.
Guys, in the short time we have left, there's one part of this that I have to say really gets to me. Democrats have created similar offenses as this. And when it happened with 10 Democrats back in the Reagan administration, Newt Gingrich beat them up, and they had it coming. So just quickly, we have literally seconds. Should nobody be doing this, Heather?
I'm sick of talking about the letter.
Quickly.
Yes, I think
All this
partisanship
emphasis
should,
on protocol, it's a smoke screen.
Okay, we got to wrap that up, and thank you. Coming up next, a new name to throw into the GOP nomination. This is, once again, the Daily Wrap, only here on Newsmax TV.